Good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Just Fish Outdoors. I'm your host, Dale York, and I designed Just Fish Outdoors to focus on freshwater lakes and streams and to provide information, tips, and techniques, along with how-to segments for catching everything from crappie to catfish. We will also provide tips on equipment, tackle, boating, and much, much more. All of this is aimed at helping you catch more fish and have fun doing it. So join us each week as we talk about my favorite subject, fishing. And that brings us to our focus today. Our focus today is going to be on hybrid fishing. And to help us locate and catch these great fish, we have several special guests in the studio today who are very knowledgeable, even borderline expert on this subject. So we'll go around the table here and ask them to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about them, and what they do.
David Clark. I've been fishing for the hybrid stripers for about 25 years on Skytook and Sooner and a little bit on Beaver Lake. It's been going real good this last spring.
Steve?
Hey, good morning, Dale. Appreciate you having me on this morning. But my name is Steve Carroll. I pretty much exclusively fish for anything with stripes on it. We do mainly hybrid stripers in the springtime, and again, mainly up on Skytook Lake. Like David said, this year was, the general consensus was that was about the best year anybody had ever seen up on Skytook. We caught just unbelievable numbers of fish and good-sized fish all spring.
So you didn't really retire. You just changed jobs.
Exactly, yeah.
Robin?
I'm Robin Schweers, and I'm not a guide. I'm a fisherman. My husband, Ed, usually puts me on the fish, but I fish for pretty much anything I can catch except for catfish. I hate catching those suckers.
You're in good company. Yeah, Robin is what you would call, I guess, an avid angler. I guess that would be
I'm a bit addicted.
Well, aren't we all? that pretty much sums all of us up here. Folks, to give you a little background on hybrids, striped bass hybrids are hatchery produced. They're a cross between a female striped bass and a male white bass. They're totally hatchery produced. They do exhibit some spawning activity similar to the white bass and the stripers in the spring. But as of yet, I don't think anyone's really observed any actual spawning fry of the hybrid stripers. You guys, any of the research you've read say anything different?
No. They say we asked a while back, the Wildlife Department, why they don't put them in Keystone because of the shad population so good.
Right.
And they said they didn't want them mixing with the striper population. And I said, well, they don't spawn. They said, well, in some instances we found where they do.
Really?
But now there's hybrids in Keystone anyway because they're coming down from call.
Yeah, and the big flood they had, what was it, back in 96, where basically call lost all of their hybrids that got into the Arkansas River system. And, they started appearing in Keystone, several years ago.
Yeah.
So, they're not like they're not there now.
Oh, they're really big and fat in Keystone, too. They're huge.
Well, as growing up on Keystone and watching the shad populations over the year in Keystone, with the constant flow that Keystone exhibits, the shad just explode in that lake every year. It's got one of the best shad populations of probably any of our northeastern Oklahoma reservoirs over a period of time. And it's not like anything wants a food up there. Hybrids can grow 2 pounds a year or more. And I see no reason why they wouldn't grow 2 pounds a year in Keystone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
They can just go crazy up there. Also, we'll talk a little bit about the characteristics. Where do hybrids hang out? Where's some of the best places to find these things? In lakes, hybrids like to stay in open water. They're an open water fish. They're more kin in many respects to stripers than they are sand bass, especially once they get above 2, 3, 4 pounds. They start, in my humble opinion, exhibiting more traits of a striper than they do a sand bass. Is that what you guys are seeing as well?
I think what you're saying is right as far as what I've seen. This year, Steve actually found them There's been like a honey hole all spring right on the edge of a channel. They're moving in and out off the channel, but they're still in 30 feet of water. There's no structure around. It's just a channel. They're not structure oriented at all, but if you find some old foundations or something like that, sometimes you'll find them around there too, or they're real good about following road beds.
Yeah, is that what you experience as well, Steve? As they get bigger?
That's what we've been noticing up on Skytook mainly is a pretty predictable pattern of these fish are they're going to key on the bait fish. So if you've got electronics and you can find bait fish, you'll probably be pretty close to where the hybrids are. And then what you want to look for is this particular area where David's talking about, and there's 3 or 4 places very similar to this up on Skytook where there's a major bend in the river channel and a shallower flat nearby. So the flat in this particular spot is about 30 feet deep. The river drops off into about 60 feet of water. But there's a major bend in that river channel right there, and we've literally been catching fish up there for, 2 or 3 months now?
Good 2 or 3 months.
Almost
hundreds.
every day.
From the 90s, in the 80s to the hundreds of fish a day that you guys have been catching on your trips.
Yeah, we had this earlier this year. It's not so much right now, but earlier this year we all have been in the boat with on days where we had over 100 fish caught.
And that's just in 6 hours, right?
Yeah, in a 6-hour trip.
Yeah.
Well, you can go through a lot of shad. We're catching 100 fish in 6 hours.
And
That's
it's a
fast
good
and
point.
furious.
It's a good point. Of course, Robin and Dave and I all fish with live shad, which is really probably the key to the success. Is that's absolutely the hybrid's favorite food is a native bait fish in the lake. So you have a huge advantage if you can fish with live shad.
Yeah, that's kind of like slow rolling a pork chop in a dog pound. That's
Yes, exactly.
They will not. They won't. You won't get a bite. You get assaulted. Is what happens.
Yeah.
So that's for those of you who are wanting to learn how to hybrid fish. One of the first things I'd recommend is you book a trip with one of these guys. And pick their brains. These people are more than happy to share knowledge and to share tactics with anyone who asks. And you can save so much money over the long run by booking a trip with one of these people, or maybe 2 or 3.
Absolutely.
And folks, right now, I want to emphasize, the kids are out of school, and when you put kids together with hybrids in one of these guides, you have magic. I mean, you will laugh. They will keep you in stitches. These fish pull so hard, and especially if you got a child that's 10, 12 years old, it's a tug of war between the kid and the fish, and you will just absolutely have a blast. And everyone we're talking to today is kid friendly. They love to have kids on their boat. They cater to families. And I just can't imagine a better thing to do for a mom or dad in the morning or an afternoon to book one of these trips.
On the family thing and all, as far as several years ago, my son and I started going to the Oklahoma Striper Club Association. As far as tips and learning and all that, you can't find a better group of people to learn that from. And they're just a good group of people. This coming month, one of the real good fisherman, Kenny, is going to give a demonstration on downrigging for stripers. Every month we have somebody different, either talking about locators or how to keep shad alive or how to throw a cast net. But it's a real good organization if you're interested in learning. And my son literally grew up in the club learning how to fish and met a lot of nice people and stuff. It's really a great organization.
It's been around a long time. And like you said, Dave, it does have some wonderful information. And, besides booking a trip with you guys, that's the other thing that I would recommend is them to get active and go to some meetings and just start talking to these folks. I mean, you guys do boat shows, you do tackle shows, you do all kinds of things with the club that keeps them active. And, if someone's trying to or looking at maybe purchasing a boat, they can come to these clubs, with this club, and start talking to some of the guides, some of the people there, try to get a background or some interest or some pointers in, what kind of boat, why did you choose this boat, what kind of electronics, why did you choose this electronics, and so on, so on, and so forth. And, in the long run, they can save a lot of money in doing this. So anyway, we'll get back to some characteristics of the hybrids here. They frequently travel in larger schools. You don't normally see 8 or 10 or 12 fish in a school. It's usually much greater than that. One of the things that becomes a problem or a different changing tactics, though, is as the water warms as it is now, those fish move constantly. I mean, they're just constantly moving around the water, and that's where your good electronics comes in, and that's also where booking a trip with a guide will really help out in that respect. Using some of these tips that we're giving you on the characteristics, also booking with some of these guides, will get you going down the road to learn how to catch these fish. Another thing that we'll talk about is rigs. We've talked a little bit about live bait. There seems to be a consensus among everyone that the best bait is live shad.
Absolutely.
Okay, so first question, how do you catch live shad? What do you do?
Robin?
Well, I don't catch them, so you might as well tell them. I watch them caught. but-
Wait on Ed.
Yeah, that's how you catch them. You say, Ed, honey, I want to go fishing.
Yeah. Well, we pretty much just about everybody in the Striper Club and most of the guys that really fish hybrids a lot catch most of their bait down on the navigation channel over around the Port of Catoosa. There's a boat ramp there in Catoosa called Rogers Point. Pretty easy access. The bait there is fairly consistent to be able to catch it. One of the things that makes the Rogers Point shad hardier than other places is the fact that when you throw the net over there, you don't catch 100 shad at a time usually. So they're not getting beat up in the net real bad, losing scales, and you don't have to show up at the lake that day or the next day with bait that's injured. You want your bait to be as frisky as possible, and a lot of the guys in the Striper Club and certainly all the guides have the ability to keep live bait at their house in home bait tanks, and we've all pretty much perfected techniques to be able to keep the fish alive and have a ready supply of fish. So having fresh bait, having frisky bait is real important. That gets harder as the summer water temps get warmer. It just makes it a little more challenging. You can have some terrible days. I woke up yesterday morning, getting ready to head down to Texas for a 2-day trip, and I woke up to 250 dead shad in my garage, and my wife was the one that pointed that out to me. She smelled it through the garage door, so that kind of delayed my departure a little bit.
Yeah, I bet she was a little frisky about that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So you can have some good days and some bad days dealing with shad at home, but it's always a learning experience, and I think David and I both have a lot of folks get in the boat to learn how to do this. And we, like Dale said a minute ago, we specialize in teaching this technique to anybody that wants to learn it. We have a free exchange of information. We're not hiding our fishing hole. We don't have any secret tips that we don't share.
Right.
But it's there's a lot of information to absorb.
Right. Yeah, Robin?
I was just going to say, when Ed and I first started fishing for hybrid, he built a homemade bait tank, to go in the boat to hold the bait in there and try to keep them frisky and everything. And we were doing everything that we thought we were supposed to do, and we'd stop on fish or what we thought we were fish, and we just couldn't catch them, and we couldn't figure it out. Finally, we decided that we needed to hire a guide, and they absolutely will teach you what to do. So many people, they go out there and they think all they need to do to figure out how to catch hybrid is to follow the guides around, but you need to do more than follow them around. You need to hire them because they'll share their secrets. They'll tell you how to do it. They'll teach you the techniques, and get you doing it right.
Yeah, they will make your journey much less bumpy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you will start catching fish a whole lot quicker. Little nuances in like, for instance, looking at your electronics, how to set up your electronics for IDing these fish, how to find these fish on your electronics. What do these schools look like on your electronics? In the course of a couple of hours, you may be cruising around the lake, and you may see several what looks like schools of fish on your sonar, but having some tips from some experts that can show you how to differentiate between fish that are catchable and a log laying on the bottom of the lake, it is one of those things that is priceless.
Or even the difference between a hybrid and a catfish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Catfish returns a totally different signal because we can get into that. We can do a whole nother show on that because of the head and the hardness of the head and the bones in the head and different things. They just return a totally different signal on your electronics than what a school of hybrids will be. So, learning some of these techniques is the way to go, folks. It's definitely the way to go. To learn what lakes in Oklahoma have these fish, you can go to the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife website. They have a complete list there of where these hybrids are. They are just the hardest fighting, pulling fish there is. They have different patterns in the spring, the summer, the fall, and the winter. We'll talk about that a little bit. Since we started with the baits, I want to stay on baits just a bit, and let's ask to describe exactly how they rig their rods. What rods do they prefer? What lines do they prefer? And, how do they rig their rods? What hooks? What sinkers? What do you guys do here?
I use a ugly stick and with a Garcia 6500, and then use fairly light line. You want to use as light as line as possible because you got a shad down there. To him, it's a big rope. So you want a small diameter. I go with 12 pound, and I'll use that whether I'm fishing for big stripers in Arkansas or hybrids on Skytook. You just leave your drag light.
Well, there's a terminology that some of these people that are listening may not understand. You'll hear the terminology downlines. You'll hear the terminology free swimmers. Could one of you folks take that and run with that and explain to us what that is?
The downline is nothing but to bass fishermen a Carolina rig where you have the sinker above a swivel about 2 or 3 feet, sometimes more, sometimes the length of the leader will make a big difference. And then the hook about 3 feet below the sinker. Just let the shad swim. The free swimmer will be a line with nothing but a split shot on it, 3 feet above the hook, and throw it out behind the boat or to the side. Sometimes that works a lot better in the summertime because then the bait has time to sink and acclimate to the water temperature as it's sinking down. Or if you're using a down line straight underneath the boat, sometimes that'll kill the bait fairly quick, especially if you get in the thermocline area.
So most of the time you guys are using down lines as opposed to free swimmers?
I love free swimmers. I love them, but a lot of the guides don't like them as much because when you get that many, you usually have, 8 to 12 rods in at one time. And if you have people using free swimmers and they don't really know how to handle them, they can get tangled up really badly in the other rods and other lines and in the motors and all that stuff. So I think the guides really prefer doing down lines most of the time.
Well, it does make it a lot easier. In the springtime, another technique that I use, and certainly use down lines a lot, but I've fished down on the coast a lot, and I've borrowed a technique and a piece of equipment from my coastal experience, a popping cork, and that lets me fish the bait out away from the boat. It lets me fish in real shallow water, and part of the false spawning activity that Dale mentioned a minute ago is a likeness to shallow water, especially in early spring when the bait fish are first becoming active in the springtime. The hybrids, of course, will follow the bait fish up into shallow water. And with a popping cork, you can have all the advantages of a free-swimming bait, but you can also, what Robin was talking about is these free-swimming baits, you can throw them out 50 feet behind the boat, And in 30 seconds, they're back under the boat, swimming around, mingling with everybody else, and tangling everybody, tangling all the other lines up, and you don't even know it.
Right.
So with this popping cork, you always know where your bait is, and that lets me fish some inexperienced anglers with this technique, and they can know where their bait is, and we catch a lot of fish in the springtime. It's almost like fishing with topwater lures, because the bait is never more than about a foot or a foot and a half away from the popping cork, and he'll swim desperately trying to get away from a big hybrid, even sometimes jumping clear out of the water.
Yeah, they'll try to crawl on top of that cork.
Oh, yeah. So that people find that a lot of fun. It doesn't last very long. Usually by the middle of May, or by the end of May, certainly the fish have moved out of that shallow pattern and are out there on those 30-foot ledges, and that's just impractical at that point. But it is another really fun technique that you can fish, that you can use for about a month in the early springtime. And I have people that will book trips in January during the boat shows, and they strictly want to go catch fish on popping cork. So once you've done it, you want to go do it again.
Yeah, it is a blast, and it really is too a blast catching them on free swimmers to a certain
Yes.
extent.
I love that.
I mean, all of a sudden your shad is 100 yards down the lake, and you don't even have to set the hook. The hook's already gone. All you got to do is start reeling the fish in.
Well, it's by far the very most natural looking presentation for a live bait to be out there swimming with little or no weight attached to him. So.
And sometimes those fish can get so finicky or so neutral that's the only way you can catch them. Now, once you catch 2 or 3 out of a school, you can get the school fired up and start casting them on down lines.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you have to use those free swimmers to catch your 2 or 3 fish to fire that school up and get them going. So it's
that
July.
brings up another aspect of technique that we all use, and it's legal in Oklahoma. It's not legal in some places, but we all chum a lot. We can. David and I and Robin and Ed all use some pretty high end electronics to find these fish, and we've had a lot of practice with locating fish out in open water. But finding the fish isn't that hard. Getting them to bite sometimes is another story altogether. And we chum with we keep our dead baits and cut them up into little pieces and serve them up as hors d'oeuvres. And like Dale said, once you only need to get 1 or 2 fish feeding, and then they all want to feed.
Yeah.
So,
it's like flicking the light switch
Oh,
on,
man,
man.
it's
It is
so
fun.
much fun.
And it is crazy how fast that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be sitting there with 4 or 5 down rods on a boat, nothing going. You start chumming or throw a free swimmer out there, and you catch a couple of fish, and all of a sudden, all your rods are gone. They're all swimming off.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all are making me want to go fishing right now.
It makes it adds another aspect that for somebody that doesn't want to or can't fish with live bait, you can go get some minnows, or you can go catch some bait and cut it up into little pieces and chum and fish those fish with a slab.
Yeah.
And not even have to have live bait.
Right. Well, that's the challenge for me. I enjoy catching them on artificial bait.
Yes.
So I will spend a lot of time trying to trick those fish into biting. And, I will not catch as many fish sometimes as you guys will do with a live bait. But for me, that's part of the enjoyment, is getting that fish to hit and catching that fish. So, folks, to kind of recap here briefly, these fish are in several Oklahoma lakes. They're in a lot of our tail races below our dam. They do real good in fast water as well. You can catch them on live bait. You don't have to go to the extent of building a big, huge live well in your house like some of these folks have done. These people are sick individuals, but that's a different story.
Definitely.
But you can catch them on big minnows. You can go to the bait shop, catch them on goldfish. They'll eat a variety of live bait, so you don't have to go to all the extents of catching these shad. But at the same time, you can go to the lake, get a throw net, catch a few fish, catch a few shad, put them in a bucket or your live well in your boat, and as long as you don't put more than 6, 8, or 10 in there, turn your aerators on, you can keep them alive for a long time. So, you don't have to go to the extent that some of these people do. So, take that in consideration when you're doing this. But get out there and try this hybrid fishing because, folks, it is fantastic. And, folks, I appreciate you coming on the show. Dave Clark, Steve Carroll, same thing. Both of these guys are family friendly. You can catch him on fishingnotebook.com as well. Robin, thanks for coming on the show and giving a little different perspective. And, folks, don't forget, send us an email. Tell us how you like the show or how we can change it. If you have a suggestion, we'll put a show together for you. You can also catch us on Just Fish Outdoors on Facebook. And, folks, don't forget, get out and enjoy one of the many lakes or streams we're blessed to have. Thanks for listening. And that'll wrap up this week's show, folks. Be sure you go over to our website or catch us on our Facebook page. That's Just Fish Outdoors. Or if you'd like more information about the show or something we can help with, feel free to drop us a line, justfishoutdoors@justfish.com. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening.